Hi. Hello. You can call me Lolly. You probably need a refresher on that because it's been a minute. It's been several minutes. It's been an entire internet hour since I have filmed a video, much less uploaded one. I'm doing the mid-year reading check-in tag, even though it's well past July, because I want to. Great. Okay, we're gonna jump right in. How have I been? I've been good. I've been busy. It's summer in Seattle. If it's nice out, I want to be outside. I'm reading some good books. Sometimes people disappear because things are not good. I'm doing other things. Um, for once, the gap is it's fine. But I do miss talking about books, so we're doing that. Question number 1. Best book you've read so far in 2024. Okay, so first off, a book I read fairly early on in the year and has so far been the book to beat, and I think it's still my favorite, A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. This is a space opera that is about falling in love with the culture of your colonizer. It's kind of the philosophical description, but it's literally about an ambassador from a small colonized planet who is sent to the capital, and she comes from a place where they have a kind of secret technology where they can inherit the memories of the people in their job before them, but her predecessor gets murdered. So she has his memories from 20 years ago because he hasn't been home to upload things. So she's trying to solve his murder. She is in love with the literature and language of the Texkalani culture. It's their language is their way they talk, and their culture and their traditions are very poetic and full of insinuation and metaphor, and it's very, very clever. The way it's perfect for like a mystery espionage political novel, that the language is another layer of navigating this. Also queer, also beautifully written. Anyway, I've read the sequel. It's excellent. Love it, love it, love it. Another one that I have to shout about is How Beautiful We Were by Mbola Mboy. This is a literary historical fiction. It's not based on any one specific event, but it's kind of an amalgamation of a lot of things. It is about a small village in an African country that is experiencing a lot of really adverse effects from oil drilling in the area. And the chapters alternate between like specific characters and then like the voice of the children. And it alternates between like specific people's characters and then kind of like generational observations of things. It's very archetypical, archetypal. I don't know if that's a word, but it's very much like, while we are following a specific story of a specific village, these are experiences that have happened over and over and over and over again, and it's in many ways heartbreaking because you see the blatant power abuse. You see how much these companies lie and break the law and know they break the law and lie about breaking the law. They can afford to. It's financially in their interest to break the law in order for them to make more money, because the people who are opposing them have very little power. And one of the central stories is about one young girl who ends up going and getting like a European college education. She becomes a lawyer and helps fight like on the international court level and like take the lawyers to court and stuff. And the way it ends, like, it seems like it's so heartbreaking at the end, but a little bit of a spoiler, excuse me, because it's kind of critical to talk about like what I love about this book, that like there is a layer of hope in there. There is a layer of hope in there that's very realistic, and things happen. Village, this particular story, they lose. I think it seems pretty obvious. It seems pretty obvious. Like, I don't think it's like that much of a surprise. It's not, you know, a murder mystery whodunit. Oh, it's that person. Well, we know who it is. It's capitalism. Capitalism did it all the time. But because of all of the work of the publicity and the international attention and documentation and paper trail and shit, well, now the company sets up a college fund for all the children descended from the people of these village. So the next generation is more educated and more connected to the world and more understanding of the systems that they are fighting. And I think that is a brilliant takeaway for a story that seems so hopeless, where it's like it's very much like you've lost this battle, the war's not over. Like, every battle is worth fighting. Even if you're going to lose most of them, every battle is worth fighting, simply to be a pain in the ass of those who want you to lose. Brilliant, brilliant. Favorite sequel that you've read this year? Absolutely. I've read some great sequels, but my favorite has to be Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson. This is the sequel to The Space Between Worlds. This is following a runner out in the outskirts of the city. The premise is it is a world where they have discovered a technology where they can hop between parallel dimensions. And each dimension is a little bit different. You know, this person died, that person succeeded, this thing went well, that alliance happened or didn't happen, and you see the ramifications. Now, the only people who can travel between the worlds is if your alternate is dead in that world. So in the first book, we follow a girl, there's like 300 worlds and she's dead on all but 13 of them. So that's the technology in the world. So this book follows and it's very much like a closed, rich utopian city with dystopian kind of desert, almost like kind of Mad Max-ish society living outside of it. So we're following a runner who lives on the outside of it. I started reading like the author's note like at the beginning, and then I think I made like an Instagram post where like, I'm so ready, 2 paragraphs in, holy shit, no I'm not. So anyway, so I'm gonna read the paragraph that author's note from Micaiah Johnson, the thing that like immediately was like, oh shit, we are in for a time. So if you also sense an undercurrent of rage in this novel, you are not wrong, but it is not bitterness. Bitterness is anger with nowhere to go. Bitterness and resignation are close and tempting cousins. Anger with a target is rage, and rage is sister to hope alone. We rage because we do believe things can be better by fire, if necessary. Like, it's raging at the system from a completely different socioeconomic position in this world. And then, of course, plot-wise, we see how, like, this person's world that seems so connected from the technology in the city, how they're actually very closely intertwined. So, of course, plot-wise, it's still fascinating, excellent. But also thematically, it is a very... Are we sensing a theme? Are we sensing themes here of the kind of dystopian, like, climate fiction that pulls at my fucking heart? Next question. I have, like, very condensed notes, so the phrasing of the questions might be totally different, but, like, you get the gist. What are some newish releases on your TBR that you still need to get to? Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. Wait, no, I actually have it. Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. The 3rd book in the Between Earth and Sky. I currently have this audiobook checked out. I will be listening to it soon after I finish my current book. I think I need to intersperse with something happy. But this will, by the end of the month, I will have finished this. It's the 3rd book in the Black Sun trilogy. And then The Ending Fire, which is the 3rd book in, what is that series called? Final Strife series. I'll put up the cover of the actual book, The Final Strife. On the cover is, what is that character's name? My favorite character in the book so far. Hassa. On the cover is Hassa, who is from the cast of basically enslaved people who, enslaved servant class who, because of prior rebellion, every single one of them who was born has their hand and their tongue removed. But, of course, they have developed a sign language and a rebellious system that has been overlooked because people thought that because they're disabled and because they're servants class that they are to be disregarded. And I'm so excited to see how the ruling class falls. Yes. My favorite series of all time. I think there was a time where I was thinking it was going to be a new favorite of all time, and I'm like, I don't know if it's a new favorite of all time. There's, especially in book 2, there's definitely things where I'm like, but like overall, I'm excited to complete the arc of the story. Question number 4. What are your most anticipated releases for the end of the year? Heavenly Tyrant by Xiran Jay Zhao. If, fingers crossed, it actually gets published this year. I mean, currently on Goodreads it's slated to be published December 25th, which I don't think is a real publication date, because their publisher has been doing shitty shenanigans. But whenever it comes out, I will be reading it immediately. I'm so excited. I just saw that this author finally got an award that they were deserving of from at Worldcon from the Hugo Awards that they were denied last year because of political censorship things. So it's and also like George R.R. Martin like reached out to them and like gave them like a special award like of his own creation, which was really sweet, and it's really great to see them finally getting like some tangible recognition for their work. They've also been amazing at fundraising and educating and talking about issues with helping Palestinians either evacuate or get medical aid or an entire fucking encyclopedia of very dire needs. I will link. I will see what I can do to link their links about fundraisers. A note about fundraisers that I think we need to hear. And this was an idea that I heard about from Devin Price that has stuck with me and is a really, really useful way of thinking about when you see people like who have like a list of like 12 fundraisers or something. You're like, how do I choose? And it's like, no, you're not choosing a person. You are throwing the money, the resources you have to spare to a greater cause. You don't have to choose which one is your favorite. No, just because as soon as that one is completed, that helps direct more attention to the next ones that are still open, or opens up a slot for another one to now get attention. Your individual decision is not that important. You being part of a system fighting another unjust system, that's what's important. Keep working at it. You're not alone in this. You're not alone in this. We're not fixing anything by ourselves. Okay, TED Talk over. Ooh, we're taking a turn. Question number 5. What was your biggest disappointment of the year? I've read a couple where I'm like, but I think my most disappointing read was Immortal Pleasures, and partially because there were things about it that I think were not good, but also like I wanted it to be something, and some of those expectations were unfair. I think my expectations were misled. So first off, looking at the cover, it's a vampire novel that retells the history mythology of, what is her name? She was known as La Malinche, a Nahua woman who translated for the Conquistador Cortés. In the ashes of the empire, she was reborn as Malinali, an immortal vampire. So we're following the retelling of a woman maligned by history, you know, in the vein of Eve and Lilith. she was not a willing participant. She was as much a victim of the system as anything else, just because like she was front and center and like played a part doesn't mean that like your anger should be directed towards her. Anyway, she's a vampire in this story. And based on the cover, you're like, oh, this is gonna be sexy times, right? No, it's not a romance. There is like some explicit sex in there, but like if you're here for the spice, like you're gonna go through many tedious dry spells in between, and it's not good romance, it's not dark romance, like this is not a romance book. It's a historical fantasy retelling. So there's that. Misled by the cover. And then twice in modern times she falls for like a really cringy insta-love plotline. Twice. I do not like insta-love. I don't like it because it just, there's no build-up. So then I'm not invested in the relationship. And I'm sure that I can, if I thought about it, I could think of examples of an insta-love dynamic that I actually liked, but they are few and far between. So it's already a hard sell for me, and I don't think it was done well. Especially because these happen late, like, when she's several hundred years old, and her character is not written to have the wisdom and life experience of someone who is that old. And part of it is like, yeah, she's been betrayed by love, she's been hurt by men and things, so like, yeah, she's overcoming a lot of stuff, but I just don't buy that she's jumping into this like puppy love thing as somebody who is that old and that powerful. It just, I don't fucking buy it. And then she meets someone else and it's a whole new, like, oh wait, never mind, this is the one. I'm like, you have not succeeded in making me care. And then also what I didn't like was the pacing really didn't work for me. Like, anyway, the thematic things were very, very repetitive. Like, it was very much telling you, this is the theme, that, like, over and over and over again, like, in almost the exact same way. So one scene in particular that is an example of that is, like, when she's freshly made into a vampire and she's running in the jungle and, like, racing a jaguar or something, and she stops in a river and stops and stares at her reflection, and here she is, like, this brand new powerful creature learning her new powers, and the story comes to a screeching halt while she once again reminisces about abusive men in her past and what they've done to her and her culture. And it's not new information, it's not new revelation, it just had a bunch of tropes that are already a hard sell for me, and then did not do them well enough to convince me to be okay with it. Like, definitely not the worst book I've read all year. I can definitely see that there's a certain category of reader who would like this, but it was, my most disappointing read because, like, it was such a cool concept, and the marketing made it seem like it was really going to be one thing, and it really wasn't, and then what it was not good enough to make up for it. What was your most surprising read of the year? Probably Puppet Show by Leon Ross. And okay, this book, I highly, highly, highly recommend reading the audiobook version, unless you are very accustomed to reading Jamaican Caribbean accent and dialect. I do not think I would have understood and enjoyed the language and the writing of this book without the audiobook as much. So this is a fantasy magical realism book that follows this island of Puppet Show, where many people are born with some gift from the gods. We're following one guy who is capable of, like, reading a person and crafting, like, the perfect meal for them. And sometimes, like, some rich man will come in and be like, I want, like, some really luxurious thing. And, it's kind of like that scene in Ratatouille where for the really grumpy restaurant reviewer. They end up presenting him with like a very simple peasant's food dish, but it immediately transports him to happy moments of his mother cooking for him. It's kind of like moments like those where sometimes like a person will be presented with something that they really weren't expecting, but it ends up being magically perfect. Let's see, there's a couple other stories. There's a woman who is kind of like falling out of love with her husband. They haven't been able to conceive a child, and that's putting some tension on them. But anyway, so there's like a love that couldn't have been, because when they met, one of them was engaged or something. But things are given a second chance. There's a young woman getting married. She hasn't come into her power yet, so we're still learning about it. And then something happens where all of the women on the island, their vulvas fall out of their body. So there is a lot of, I think it's funny. I think it's funny and well done and lighthearted. But there was a point in this where I'm like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like the magical realism of Salman Rushdie a little bit. And I kind of want to suggest it to my dad. And then like that plot point happens. I'm like, I'm going to have to warn him about that. Maybe I need to give you the benefit of the doubt and you're going to appreciate it fine. But like, I'm going to warn you about it. There's the word vulva, and various versions of that are repeated many times in this book. But it's interesting because while most of the conversation is still very gender binary, there is I think room in there for like some gender expansive things, because there are women in there who are like, you know what, I'm glad, you know what, it's brought me it's more trouble than it's worth. I'm glad to be rid of it. Like, oh, something happened and you physically lost yours? I'm sorry. Hey, you want mine? You can have mine. Here you go. It's a very interesting experiment when, like, this... I mean, in particular in thinking of, like, some women who work at a pleasure house, then have men who are, like, not invited show up there, and then they're, like, presented with, like, that, you know, this object of men's attention is physically removed from, like, the person's body, and, like... That's probably like the hardest part of the book, was like that scene, but I think it's still done in a way that's like not super heavy and traumatizing, but it is a really interesting exploration of like so much of the female experience is driven by like men's attention towards this specific body part, and when it is physically removed, like what the fuck does that happen? What the fuck does that do to social dynamics? And like So I do think like there's a little bit of like trigger warnings in there where it might like kind of bring up like some very heavy thoughts, but like the book itself is not that heavy. It is a bit of a chunker. Again, I highly recommend the audiobook. Ends happy. Things are fine. Beautiful cover. This was like a cover buy, and I'm like, it's a little bit outside of my normal range. Will I love it? Yeah, I do. I kind of do. It's a little bit of an odd egg on my shelf, but like in a good way. Okay, number 7, favorite new or new to you author, Arkady Martine. I've only read 2 of her books, but I am so excited to read more from her and see what else she comes out with in the world. That, you know, that's the author of A Memory Called Empire and A Desolation Called Peace. I want more. I want more. I want more. New new character crush or like new favorite romance. What is this character's actual name? So neither of these are from romance books, but the first one is, I would say, for once, I actually got a little bit of a character crush. This is Leslie Brun from The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello, which is a pretty grisly queer trans horror. But Leslie Brun, if you walked into my town, I would not be able to take my eyes off you. Now, I think he, so uses he, him pronouns, but is a nurse traveling to small Appalachian towns, like the turn of last century. And, you know, the world sees him as a woman, and it's a pretty conservative small town, very bigoted, conservative, religious leader who, like, the fact that Leslie walks in wearing pants means, like, well, now we will not respect you. So he has to, like, put on a dress and, like, perform a little bit to, like, try to get them to, like, vaccinate against polio and tuberculosis and, you know, have women not die in childbirth and things. So it's an uphill fight to begin with, and then there is another trans person in the village who is clearly being abused because of their behavior, and then things happen, monster attacks the town, all of those all of the, you know, small-minded people, there is no salvation for them. They don't get a redemption arc. Even if they were only discriminatory out of fear and social pressure, like, no. This is a story where the queer characters live, and anyone who even looked at them sideways gets something coming from them, because, like, it's very much like a very much fictional exploration of trans rage in a way that is like, this is what I love about fiction, especially speculative fiction, where it's like, here we can explore all of the most vengeful fantasies that we may enact on those who hurt us. And, well, it's fiction. It's fiction. No one's actually hurt in the making of this. And having an outlet for that rage in fiction can be very healing and helpful. Also some monster sexy times. A little bit weird. But I'm here for it. I'm here for it way more than I'm here for any insta-love plot. Like, anyway. It's heavy, but it's excellent. It's excellent. It's excellent. And it's a novella. It's short. Yay. We love that too. A famous, like, romance dynamic is a sorceress comes to call, and it's the sister, the unwed sister Hester, and the man that, you know, she turned him down years ago. They're older. I mean, they're, quote, old, but they're, like, in their 50s or 60s. It's just that, like, Hester has arthritis, so she kind of, you know. But, like, their, like, rekindled love is lovely, and love Hester. Just, you know, she's kind of like the curmudgeon-y, feisty aunt who's, like, absolutely gonna save you from all the worst things that are happening to you. That's another book that's, like, somehow very heavy. Not quite as heavy as The Woods All Black, because it's T. Kingfisher. Like, she takes care of her, you know, you know that you're safe in her hands. But there are definitely some heavy themes in that one, but that one ends very happy all around. Like, only really the worst people get punished, you know? That one's also excellent. Continuing on. Favorite character? Evie O'Neill from the Diviners series, which I'm currently like halfway through the last book. Now, the most common thing I see in the comments from these books is how everyone is so annoyed by her. But I love her because that's the point. She's supposed to be an annoying character. She's supposed to be a frivolous party girl flapper thrown into this intense magical world where now people are dying and there's ghosts, and like she's giving Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where like she just wants to be a teenager and go shopping and look at boys and dance, but no, the weight of the fucking world's on her shoulders and she's annoyed about it, and she's gonna make all of you annoyed in the process. And I just read a line in the 4th book that describes her that I think kind of sums up what I like about her. So her power is she can touch an object and kind of read a little bit of its history. So she's just kind of like learning people's secrets all the time. You know, and she's like 17, 18. Conversation between two people, and one person says, "I just don't understand how a person who reads objects and collects so much about people and who they are could choose to be so blind." Well, if you knew all those things about people, wouldn't you want to be blind sometimes? Going to parties and living fast is Evie's revenge on a cruel world. She looks it in the eye and says, "You will not break me." And then she usually goes and gets drunk. So, anyway, I'm going to defend her. Question number 10, a book that made you cry. Probably, I don't really cry much with books, but like big emotional moments. Be a Revolution by Ijoma Oluo. In particular, because there's a moment where she's talking about during the Black Lives Matter protests, the CHOP zone in Seattle, the like Capitol Hill autonomous occupied protests, where they like blocked, they basically like chased police out of a certain precinct, the precinct that was like enacting a lot of abuses on protesters at that time, and took it over. And I was literally driving through that intersection when she was talking about it. It was wild and serendipitous. And anyway, this book is excellent. It's also very much like in a world where you feel overwhelmed by all the bad things, like how the fuck do you keep going? Why is the fight still worth having? Here is another book that really delves into it and talks about all of the people who are fighting the good fight. And a lot of it's hard because she's very clear about like all of the hurdles in the way, and like how people burn out. You don't fight because you can win, you fight because it's right, and because the satisfaction you get is being a pain in the ass of those who want you to fail. But also like kind of going into like policy challenges and just things like that, but also like very much calling out, like here, like when you don't know what to do, here are people who are an example of like, here is what you can do. Here is the work that is happening. You cannot save the world by yourself. And you do not need to reinvent the wheel every single time that you tackle a problem. People have been fighting these problems for decades, if not centuries. Join them. And when I went to go see her talk, when the book was released, I went to go see her as part of her author tour. And I loved her comment that like, speaking out and fighting for things, like it can be scary because like maybe you are gonna like lose some friendships or some relationships are gonna be strained, but think about what's on the other side of that. Think about finding the people who support you in these ideas instead of isolate you for them. Think about, what if we succeed in getting that initiative to pass? What if we succeed in making a change? What if we win? Or what if we just make it a little bit better? What if we leave the world knowing we made it a little bit better than how it started? It's worth it. It's worth it. Like whatever it looks like for you, it's worth it. It's worth it! Okay. Question number 11. What is a book that made you happy? The Diablo's Curse, which is another excellent sequel I read. So this is the sequel to The Wicked Bargain. Hold on, where did you go, baby? So that is a sequel to The Wicked Bargain by Gabe Cole-Novoa, which is another trans fantasy, young adult, let's see, deals with diablos, deals with devils and demons and pirates and the spectrum of Latin pirates in the Caribbean. So this one, we follow the very gender fluid demon from The Wicked Bargain on their quest to get their curse as a Diablo revoked, so that they can enjoy their existence again. It follows the gender fluid demonio Dami as they try to become permanently human before time runs out and they lose their soul forever. So, like, of many of the books I've talked about, it's definitely more on the lighthearted side. I mean, like, the stakes are still high, but it's young adult. It's definitely, like, you know that, like, it's while it is fraught, you know it's going to end happy. Like, you know they're going to figure it out. It's just like, but how do we get there? How do we get there? Question number 12. Favorite book to film adaptation that you've seen? Probably Foundation, which is on Apple TV. I've read the books a very, very long time ago. I remember trying to reread them and being like, conceptually, great. In execution, dry, dull. I'll wait for the series. And the series, I think, does a really good job of, like, illustrating the concepts of the series, and, like, the acting is good. And, yeah, I think it's, like, I don't remember the books well enough to be like, is it a faithful adaptation? Like, does it need to be? Does it need to be a faithful adaptation if the things they chose to change were intentional and helped make it a better story for television, for modern audiences, for, you know, whatever they're trying to do with it? But yeah, I like it. Continuing on. Question number 13. Favorite video that you've made this year? I haven't uploaded anything this year. Oops, I'm sorry. I filmed so much, so I had to go check and be like, oh, I didn't actually upload anything. Oops. So maybe this one. Maybe this one. We're manifesting. It's going to be great. Question number 14. What are, I'm going to butcher the phrasing of this question. What are your top books on your TBR that you want to read before the end of the year? Books that you need to read before the end of the year. Well, I'm in the middle of Catalina by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio, and it's very interesting. Again, very different from a lot of books I read. It's fiction, but it's very memoir-esque. So the closest thing in my wheelhouse that I can compare it to is Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. Just in the sense of, like, it's memoir-esque, but not really. But it's very clearly drawn on the author's own experiences. Not paranormal, to my knowledge, so far. But it follows a young woman who is undocumented at the time when the DREAM Act has, like, been enacted but is now being contested, and she's living with her grandparents who are also undocumented, and she's definitely, like, a spitfire of a character. So it's very interesting. The writing is kind of stream of consciousness, like, from one paragraph to the next will kind of be like a non sequitur, where there'll be these moments where she like describes something, the way she views the world, something where it's just like, she's a brilliant fucking writer. Yeah, very different from a lot of things that I like to read, but totally worth it. I'm excited for it. Also coming out soon is Celestial Monsters, which is the next book. Where are you? Which is the sequel to The Sunbearer Trials by Aidan Thomas, which is a young adult Percy Jackson-esque story, but it's Latin American, Mesoamerican mythology. Lovely, lovely, lovely. That will be a good time. What else? Mexican Gothic. Okay, here's 2 more books I have to read, and I'm so excited to read before the end of the year. Mexican Gothic, like, I've read so much Silvia Moreno Garcia, and not this one. Everything about it says, like, this is going to be one of the ones I really, really like. Silvia Moreno Garcia, I really love her as an author. Her books are very hit and miss for me. You know, they're a consistent 3-star. They're always very much like, I like the idea of the project. I like, you know, and every book kind of feels like a slightly different genre, so maybe that's part of it. I like the character dynamics that she explores, but, like, I don't think any of them have been a 5-star, and most of them have been, like, 3 stars. But, like, overall, I love the project of what she does with her writing. Anyway, so I'm gonna finally read this one, and then this other book that finally came out. Like, we thought it was gonna be like a 30-year wait in between books, and now it came out this year. This is My Favorite Thing is Monsters, Book 2. It's this giant graphic novel that's all, like, pen and ink, hand illustrated. I mean, this is clearly printed, but, like, you can see all of the pen strokes in this artwork. So of course it probably took the author forever and forever and forever to do book 2. So book 1 follows this young girl, she's like 12, 14, who she views herself as a werewolf girl. It is unclear whether I don't think anyone else views her as a monster, but I think it's kind of a metaphor for like the monstrousness a young girl feels coming into puberty and feeling not particularly conventionally attractive or normal. She was very into monsters and horror movies and stuff. And in the first book, what is it, like a neighbor in her building gets murdered, and then she's delving into the history of this woman who was a Holocaust survivor, and I think it looks like a suicide, but then it's revealed that like no, she was murdered because she had these secrets, and it looks like maybe our protagonist's brother is like the main suspect, and like there's definitely something shady going on with him, but it is revealed like no, she was like, this neighbor was being followed by other people. The novel tackles race, gender, and what it means to be monstrous in big and small ways. It could not be more relevant to today's climate. So I'm excited for that. Okay, I was hoping this would be short. I got an over an hour of footage here. Some things never change. If you are interested in doing this tag, do it. I don't care what time of year it is. There is never a bad time to talk about books that you're excited about, and if these particular questions help guide you to feel excited about talking about books again, please, even if you just like answer them in the comments or something, please have joy. There's enough shitty things in the world. Have joy. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I encourage you to go out into the world and be curious. If you've made it to the end of the video, leave a star emoji in the comments. And I will catch you folks in another video at some point, hopefully, fingers crossed. And if not, this was still fun. It's gonna be more okay than you think.